everybody, and welcome to Musings. So this is kind of an emergency one because I don't typically do two of these a week, but I spent like 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, trying to record a normal Notorious pod with a really amazing guest. I won't name him because we're trying to redo it, but I just had like ISP troubles the entire time we're trying to record the thing. So ultimately, after getting, I don't know, 40 minutes into conversation with all kinds of stops and starts, we just said, let's just reschedule, when my ISP would like start working. And it definitely wasn't, my equipment. I know that. And then we later find out, internet traffic is real high in your neighborhood. So we're going to have some disruptions. I'm like, you have one job. You're an ISP. Like, how do you not know? Anyway. So long and short of it is, unfortunately, we couldn't record that one. We couldn't finish it. It really sucked. I'm hoping to bring him back on so that we could actually have that conversation and bring it to all of you. So as a result, this week you're getting two of just me talking. And obviously, since given that, I'm like, okay, what do I want to talk about? And there was one thing that kind of came up, and I really debated, do I even want to talk about this? Because it's a little bit, it's a bit of a dicey topic. Let's put it that way. But I think it's worth exploring. So, when I made the transition like last year and I said, listen, I'm kind of changing the shift a little bit. And I want to try and explore big trends that are going to affect everybody, but especially the real estate industry. And one of the trends that I'd mentioned was decentralization. Now, I've done a couple of videos. I've done some writing recently, really talking about the others, like inflation, right? Macroeconomics. About demographics, about technology. But I haven't really done a whole lot around decentralization. But this is one of the big major sort of mega trends, if you will, that I think is affecting the whole world, which means it will naturally affect us in the real estate and housing industry. But the Canadian truckers protest that's going on and the government's response to it, especially like as of today, I think this is kind of hot off the press, is making me think this is an object lesson in a way around decentralization. Why ultimately, I think why I'm so bullish on blockchain technology, why I'm so bullish on crypto. So I thought I would just kind of muse on that with you. This is not about the protest. This isn't about politics. I mean, I'm not a politics channel. I certainly have my ideas and it is what it is, but that's not really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in what these events potentially mean. So the story basically is something like, look, I started getting into crypto and Bitcoin and blockchain and all of this stuff early last year, around January, February of last year. And it had to do with a conversation with a friend who convinced me that I should take another look at it because I had written off blockchain before then, right? I said, it's cool technology. I guess it's cool for like crypto geeks, and sure, these young kids want to go, gamble with Dogecoin or whatever. Like, what's that got to do with me? And I just didn't think it was really worth, like, really thinking about beyond the initial kind of, okay, so this is what people want to do. That ended up being a mistake, but I didn't know that until I did a deep dive and started really researching what this stuff is and how it might work, what it changes. But still, so I started, looking at Bitcoin initially, and I almost immediately kind of saw the value prop, the theory and the philosophy, the investment thesis, if you will, behind Bitcoin. And that is, very simply, is trying to create some form of digital currency that central banks don't control, right? So if you go listen to any of the Bitcoin maxis, if you go listen to people like Saifedean Ammous or Jeff Booth, or I don't know, Robert Breedlove, or any of these guys, or Michael Saylor, right? Any of these guys, their opinions, you'll notice a lot of it has to do with their focus on central banks printing money and how that devalues the currency. It devalues wealth creation, and therefore they want to move it and use Bitcoin as a store of wealth, all of that. Again, whether you agree or disagree, like that's the investment thesis, right? That's the philosophy behind Bitcoin. It's not just, oh, wow, it's going up, so let me just go buy it and cash out when it's at a certain point. The true believers, I think, are, really holding on for a real long time because the expectation is something's got to give. This system can't continue the way it is. And obviously, when the U.S. printed, I don't know, like $8 trillion, from the start of the pandemic, it was sort of this rocket fuel, to that fire, right? It's like, okay, wow, didn't know that was that easy. Didn't know that the Fed could just kind of push a couple buttons and voila, all of a sudden we have 40% more US dollars. So that's the thesis behind Bitcoin. And I understood it. I got it. I'm like, okay, certainly it's not something that I think anyone, like basically, I don't think anyone should be buying Bitcoin or putting money into it, except for money they're prepared to lose, right? Because the volatility is like off the charts. It's crazy. It's, up 50%, down 50%. It's just, but I understood kind of what that was. I had a little bit more difficult time understanding some of the other cryptos, the altcoins, the Ethereum, the, Solana, the Dogecoin, right? The meme coins. I had a little bit more difficulty with that. And I just kind of said, okay, well, I understand Bitcoin. It's very sort of difficult to use in a way. It's very expensive. At least, back then, ETH gas fees were not $200 a transaction. So I was like, okay, I guess I kind of see it, but it's really not that convenient. And is this really going to be like the new global currency? I'm not sure. And maybe these altcoins, a lot of them which were coming out saying, look, we're going to be faster and we're going to be more useful, et cetera, were coming out. And I wasn't sure if I really bought it. And then August comes along. So what kind of really convinced me and said, okay, this thing's going to go like mainstream. It's just a matter of time. It's not an if, it's a when. This is actually going to, the crypto, some form of crypto is going to be how, it's going to be far more mainstream, than it was at the start of 2021. And the specific incidents that triggered it for me was when OnlyFans banned adult content, right, on their platform. So if you remember back in August, OnlyFans, which is, it's a website, I guess, where, if you're a creator, that's what they call them, you can post content to people who are subscribers, right? So who are paying you money. For obvious reasons, the people who embraced this platform initially, and for, there was the bulk of the traffic, bulk of the creators, bulk of the traffic, were porn. They were adult actresses, adult actors doing sexually explicit content. OnlyFans then in 2021 decided they're going to try to go public. And in the course of that, things happened. And all of a sudden they make this announcement, no more sexually explicit content, right? And they wanted to transition OnlyFans into like, we have celebrities, we have sports stars, we have singers, we have rappers, we have these people who are creating unique content for their, biggest fans who are willing to pay them $5 a month or whatever it is, right? And then almost immediately, like there was this huge outcry and it just kind of blew up. But I remember when that happened, I said, okay, why did this happen? And the news that came out was, and let me share the screen with you guys, because later it was sort of verified, right? Okay, so let me blow that up a little bit. All right. So it turns out what happened is that the banks, and specifically the payment processors that were working with OnlyFans, went to OnlyFans and basically told them, we were going to have problems working with you, especially as you're preparing to go public, because you're engaging your porn site, and we don't really want to have much to do with you. So, this article, OnlyFans CEO on why it banned adult content, the short answer is banks, right? So it's just quickly, change in policy, we had no choice. The short answer is banks. Stokely told the Financial Times interview published today. See if I can make this a little larger. All right. He named 3 major banks, refused service because of, quote, reputational risk. And this is like obvious, right? If you just sit back and think about it, of course, if you're JP Morgan, if you're Bank of New York Mellon, you don't want to be associated with some giant porn site, right? That's not the kind of stuff you want to put in your shareholder letter. That's not what you want your image, your brand, your logo to be identified with. So, they basically went to OnlyFans like, yeah, we don't really want you to bank with us anymore. Right? But even more importantly was this part, right? And I thought when OnlyFans first like banned adult content, a lot of the talk around, sort of Reddit around the internet was that it had to do with payment processing. And so here it is in the article. Payment processors like MasterCard and Visa are well-known bottlenecks in the digital economy. They've recently clamped down on the use of their cards to pay for sexual content, ostensibly cut off platforms that allow child sexual abuse material and non-consensual pornography, although the crackdown follows pressure from organizations that broadly oppose sex work and pornography. I mean, again, it makes like 100% perfect sense. If you're Visa, if you're MasterCard, if you're PayPal, if you're any of these sort of mainstream payment processing companies, you don't really want to be associated with porn merchants. You know what I mean? Even though that they're legal, right? It's not like drug deals. Like this, they're not engaging in anything illegal. Child porn certainly legal. Anything non-consensual certainly legal, right? But that's not necessarily a reason why Visa or MasterCard just decided we don't really want to work with, companies like this. It's because the legal stuff that they were doing was unsavory, right? And it's really hard to defend, pornographers, right? It's like, yeah, it's legal, but nobody's gonna be like proud to go to their mom and be like, hey, mom, guess what? Like, so anyway, so payment processors started saying, yeah, you know what, we don't want to work with you. What happened immediately after? So as soon as that happened, I remember saying to myself, I need to buy more crypto. Because from my standpoint, every major technology we've ever had, VHS, like mobile phones, Wi-Fi internet, high speed, like bandwidth, the internet itself to some extent. This is like the deep secret, right? The dirty secret about the internet was much of its initial growth was because of adult content. Even today, something like 60%, 70% of all internet traffic is adult content, right? Like it's amazing actually when you think about it. So I said, okay, this, I think, because such a major website, such a major sort of adult content platform like OnlyFans was getting shut down, not because of government, not because of laws, not because they banned pornography. That's not what happened, right? It was banks and payment processors essentially saying, we don't want to work with you. So they didn't have any way to get paid. They didn't have any way to pay their, people who are on their platform. They had no way to pay. They had no way to exist financially. And I said, you know what? Crypto is going to go through the roof. My reasoning on it was essentially that you can't stop sex, drive, right? It just can't, like some, and I remember being 18, 19 years old, like you can't stop that. If you want to look at, adult content, if you want to look at porn on the internet, guess what? You're going to find a way to do that. And I thought these guys, once they couldn't, pay for whatever, so their OnlyFans, creator or some porn website or whatever, once they realized I can't pay for this using Visa, I can't pay for using MasterCard, how do I pay for this stuff? Oh, crypto. I thought the number of crypto owners would explode, almost from that moment. And it kind of has, right? That's the amazing thing. And this story I found talking about, the OnlyFans ban, was that in the immediate aftermath, some of these like crypto-based OnlyFans alternatives exploded, right? So let's just read this article. OnlyFans does not accept payment in cryptocurrency. So when its content ban was announced, creators like Braids, that's a star, I guess, on the platform, began to look towards crypto-based solutions as an alternative to mainstream platforms likely to face pressure from banking partners. Okay, go scroll down a little bit more. Jeff Dillon, Nafty's chief business development officer, told Brave New Coin that signups to the platform have increased dramatically since the first OnlyFans announcement. Nafty operates both an NFT platform, nftart.com, and a fan content sharing platform, naftyfans.com. Function native to a Nafty token, yada, yada, yada. These sort of crypto-based platforms for adult content exploded. And I said, okay, crypto's going to be mainstream, right? It's just a matter of time now. When, not if, right? Because once the more legitimate, more mainstream payment processors and banks decided, we don't want to have anything to do with you, it doesn't do away with the demand. Like the demand hasn't gone anywhere. It's not like all of a sudden a bunch of guys who are, paying their favorite OnlyFans star, hundreds of dollars a month, we're going to all of a sudden be like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to see her anymore. Like that's not going to happen. That's not how, like porn's never been, something to celebrate, right? It's just always been kind of, oh, dirty secret kind of stuff. It's been with us from like start of humanity. I remember reading a story that after Gutenberg invented the printing press by printing the Bible, actually, the reason why the printing press became, as widespread as popular was because it was being used to print porn or whatever the 15th century version of that is. Like I don't know, naughty stories of, Lady Chatterley. It's an incredibly powerful urge. The demand wasn't going anywhere. And if crypto is going to kind of help fulfill that demand, I thought crypto adoption is going to explode. And again, there's some evidence to suggest that has happened, right? Now, I think what's happened with Canada, what's going on right now with Canada might be the next big event that's going to accelerate crypto adoption, even beyond. Because again, with something like OnlyFans or NAFTA or porn or adult content, this isn't anything that anyone's real proud of. This is anything that like mainstream people are going to get involved with, right? So like someone who's just a mom with 2 kids, and she's not going to go get a wallet to get crypto so she could go pay OnlyFans. Like that's not going to happen, right? And grocery stores and whatever, they're not interested in necessarily taking NAFTA coin as payment, right? It's like, look, just give me dollars, right? Use your Visa and MasterCard, because Visa and MasterCard are not telling us that they don't want our business. And then enter what's going on in Canada, right? So again, I have no real interest in talking about the politics of this, but fact is, one of the results, so very recently with Justin Trudeau, with the emergency announcement, one of the things that they've done is they've said, we're going to essentially go after the finances of the protesters and the people who are supporting them financially. So the latest news this morning, Canada sanctions 34 crypto wallets tied to trucker freedom convoy. If we go down, here we go. Ontario Provincial Police and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police ordered all regulated financial firms to cease facilitating any transactions from 34 crypto wallets tied to funding trucker-led protests in the country. This is a first, right? This is a first. Now, here's what's kind of interesting about it. So, that's these 34 crypto wallets. Here's a story from CBC News. Again, this was today. Banks have started to freeze accounts linked to protests, Freeland says. So let's read through this a little bit quickly. This emergency law also allows banks to target for account closure donors to the GoFundMe and the GiveSend Go fundraising campaigns that fueled this protest. Freeland says she wouldn't get into specifics of whose accounts are being frozen. Okay, so 2 things are happening. One is, under this Emergency Act, the Canadian government is saying we're going to freeze the accounts of obviously the people who are like in the trucker protest movement, but that they're also potentially going to target people who donated to those accounts, right? To those movements, whether it's GoFundMe or GiveSendGo. And as we know, in the news of the past 2 weeks, unless you've been living under a rock somewhere, GoFundMe got into a huge amount of hot water, at least PR-wise, because they said, hey, it turns out that we don't want to support this trucker thing, so we're going to not give the $10 million or so that they raised to the truckers, as GoFundMe normally would do. Instead, initially, they said they're going to redirect it to an appropriate charity. There was a huge outcry, and so, okay, no, you could just get a refund, right? Just submit a request, we'll refund your money. We're not giving the money to these people because what they're doing is illegal in Canada, so on and so forth. Cool. Hey, it's GoFundMe, that's their business, whatever you want. GiveSendGo, which then popped up saying we're not going to do that. We will send the money to the truckers, to these protests. Bunch of people went and donated money to GiveSendGo, and then Canada came down and essentially said, you are not allowed to do this, right? So you can't send money to Canadian citizens. You can't send money to these truckers. A little bit of, back and forth going on there because GiveSendGo is like, screw you. We're not a Canadian company. We don't need to obey you. Turns out if you're trying to send money to Canadian, citizens, you probably do have to deal with Canadian laws. So whatever the case might be, the money that's in the GiveSendGo account is also now not being delivered, to the truckers. I'm sure there are lawsuits and all of that going on right now. So after those two things happened, a bunch of people started setting up crypto accounts. They said, okay, if we can't get financial support to these protesters through the regular banking system, through Visa, MasterCard, through payment process, through crowdfunding platforms, then we'll use Bitcoin, we'll use crypto. Because the theory behind Bitcoin and crypto is that this stuff is beyond government control, right? So they did that. Only to have now the Canadian government sanctions 34 crypto wallets. So it turns out just because you're using Bitcoin or crypto doesn't mean you're outside of the reach of the law, of the government. They came in and they froze 34 of these crypto wallets. It's not clear whether they could take the money out of those accounts, but they at least froze it and said, hey, you are not allowed to do business with these 34 wallets. Now, this seems like bad news in the short term. I think if you are a fan of crypto, if you're a fan of the idea of permissionless, decentralized, sort of anonymous monetary system, this seems like real bad news because, look, if you can't actually use crypto to conduct any sort of economic, affairs, then what's the difference? If the government can come in and shut down your wallet, then really, you could talk all you want about, crypto is resistant to government regulation. Like, nah, man, it's not true. Apparently, you can just get shut down. I think in the short term, this is bad news. I think in the long term, this means that we're going to see an explosion of interest in crypto this year. And I think we're going to see an explosion of crypto among more mainstream, legitimate people. In other words, the base of this thing might have been set by, unsavory characters, porn addicts, Onlyfans, simps, whatever. But now with this, I think there's now I don't know, it's not a justification. I don't know what the right word is. I think what we're seeing it might be more socially acceptable now among regular people to be like, oh, I'm in crypto. I need to get a wallet. I need to do these things. So let me explain a little bit why I think that. First of all, with respect to this freeze, with respect to the Canadian government froze these 34 accounts, knowing what I know, I was like, what does that mean? Like, how do you freeze a wallet? So I went and started looking to see what other people thought about it. And this is on Reddit, cryptocurrency. And one of the people asked the exact same thing. Like, what does that mean? Like to freeze, freeze an account. So let's scroll up. What does it mean when Canada says they have frozen 34 crypto wallets? Trudeau's reporting financial institution freeze assets. Reported to Canada's frozen 34 crypto wallets. And here I have a few thousand invested in crypto after listening to my brother promote crypto as being safe from any regulation. This is supposed to be the currency that can't be screwed around with by the government, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, if they can freeze your account, if they can freeze your wallet, that just ain't true. So there are a number of answers, but I thought this one was kind of the simplest, which is one of the commenters like, look, it just means that the Canadian government, have told Canadian exchanges to block accounts of anyone depositing from those addresses. They can't actually block crypto wallets. All they have to do is atomic swap the BTC to XMR and then deposit the XMR to the exchange and problem solved. Right there with that last clause, I think they've lost like 98% of any normal person in Canada who's interested in doing financial transactions. Having said that, he's not wrong. Because my understanding as well is you can't freeze a wallet, right? So what you can do, and when they said call Canadian exchanges, so a lot of what a lot of folks think has happened is is the Canadian government went to centralized exchanges, right? So in the US, we have, like Coinbase and Gemini. So these are more like companies, and they're really important to the whole crypto sort of ecosystem because they're the way you sort of, we call it fiat on-ramp and off-ramp, right? Meaning you take your money, your US dollars or Canadian dollars, and then you go to these centralized exchanges, and then you buy cryptocurrency with US dollar. At some point, you're going to want dollars. So then you sell your Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever, you get US dollars, and then you transfer that back to your normal bank. So you could go to the ATM, withdraw cash, and go take care of whatever you need to take care of. For, I don't know, like throughout the whole blockchain crypto community, there's this saying, right? Not your keys, not your money, not your keys, not your wallet. And the idea is, as long as you have an account and you have your cryptocurrency on one of these, sort of centralized exchanges, then you don't control your money, right? That exchange controls your money. And because the exchange is a company, the government can come in and tell the exchange, do this, do that, or else. And I think what the idea here is that those 34 wallets that were frozen are centralized exchange wallets, right? And the idea then is anything that's decentralized, especially if it's in quote cold storage, like hardware devices, things that are not connected to the internet 24/7, there's not a whole lot the government can do to freeze those wallets, right? I guess in theory, if they could somehow identify that this cold wallet or this decentralized wallet, like a MetaMask or a Phantom wallet or Soulflare, if they could somehow link that wallet address to a specific like trucker convoy person, I guess in theory they could maybe somehow put something out that says, hey, this wallet here is not allowed to do any transaction, not allowed to send crypto, not allowed to receive crypto. And they could track any other wallet that they sent crypto to receive crypto from. In theory, I suppose that is all possible because the blockchain is open and it's public. However, you can't really freeze it, right? Because again, if they're interacting with some wallet in Asia somewhere, like what power does the Canadian government have to tell some crypto trader in Indonesia not to trade with this wallet address over here? And the answer is they don't, right? So the thinking is that these 34 crypto wallets that were frozen are in centralized exchanges. Now, again, in the short term, this terrible news for crypto. In the long term, I think this is potentially a turning point, really, for mass adoption of crypto. And I think it's a turning point in terms of the decentralized wallets, which is kind of the true ultimate kind of nature of blockchain, of crypto, of all this stuff, which is why I thought decentralization is one of the biggest trends that's happening kind of under our noses. We're not paying a lot of attention to it, but it's huge. And it's this. So now we have a situation, again, whether you agree with them or not, right? This isn't about, the politics of the trucker protest, whatever. You can't deny that most of the people who are in that movement are not your like computer scientists, cryptographic nerds, who are doing crypto trading all the time. Like that's not who they are. These are like regular blue collar worker. They're truckers. They're regular people. And regular people don't want to get involved in this stuff that's real complicated and annoying. They want like simple, like bank simple. Like I deposit my money in the bank. When I need money, I go to the bank and I get my money, or I use a debit card or a credit card and swipe a card and I buy groceries and swipe a card, right? Similarly with crypto, it's like, okay, look, if I'm going to try and use crypto, centralized exchanges, go set up an account at, whatever, Canadian exchange. I don't know what's up there. I mean, Coinbase, I actually don't know what Canadian exchanges exist necessarily. And then have people send me, Bitcoin into that wallet, and then I'll go sell the Bitcoin for a Canadian dollar and, do it that way. That can be shut down. The government has proven it. If you centralize, the government come in and they're like, hey, you either shut these 34 things down or we shut you down or we fine you or whatever else, right? Whatever the penalties. So any sort of company, any sort of centralized organization or entity is going to have a very difficult time resisting what the local government mandates, what they dictate, because nobody wants to go to jail, nobody wants to be in trouble, right? But if it's decentralized, it's much harder. In fact, I think it's potentially impossible. I mean, I don't know. It may turn out that these 34 wallets that were, quote, frozen are somehow decentralized, and somehow the Canadian government found a way to freeze them out of the entire global crypto network. I really doubt it. I really can't see that being the case. Which means that the next time that there's some sort of protest, again, since it's not about politics, it could be a BLM protest, it could be whatever, it could be a right-wing protest, it could be any protest. The people who are doing that then have to look at what just is happening in Canada right now and say, before we do this, we're going to need some decentralized wallets set up. And we're going to have to do funding, not through centralized exchanges and not through GoFundMe, not through GiveSendGo, not through anything that is centralized. We're going to have to do it decentralized, right? Because whatever we do is going to be protesting against the government. They're going to be pissed off, and they'll come in and tell the banks, they'll tell these centralized exchanges, shut these wallets down, which means that's useless to us. No matter how convenient it is in normal daily use, it's not convenient when you can't get your money, right? When you can't access your resources, then it's completely useless. So I think what this means in my mind, and again, hey man, I could be completely wrong. The reason why I thought like crypto adoption would go up after the Onlyfans thing is you can't change the demand. The demand will be there. They're going to find a way. If that means going and buying NFTI tokens, then they're going to do that. But that was still in the shadows. It's a little dirty. Nobody wants to be like, oh, I have crypto because I'm a huge OnlyFans consumer. Nobody's bragging about that. There are going to be a whole bunch of people who are more than willing to say, okay, but if it's about supporting protests, it's about supporting, freedom, or supporting equity, or supporting justice, whatever it is. And in order to do that without my getting screwed, I need to get a decentralized, maybe even a hardware cold wallet. I'm going to get a decentralized hardware cold wallet, learn how to use it. And yeah, it's more annoying, but at least my money will get to where it needs to go, or I will be able to receive the type of financial support that I need in order to do what the government doesn't want me to do. I think this is maybe like one of those lessons learned type things, right? That the Canadian truckers today, they didn't anticipate this. So they thought, okay, you know what? Banks don't want to deal with this. We'll go through crypto. After this, they're going to have to say, okay, that's not the way. Anything centralized, the government can reach. Anything centralized, the government can regulate. They can control, which means we have to go decentralized. And now we're in the realm of mass mainstream crypto adoption, not from just porn addicts, but from regular people. I think 2022 potentially goes down as one of those like weird turning points in history that none of us realize until after the fact. Like, oh my gosh, like the world changed that day. It could go down as one of those, because that's what I'm thinking. Like, and I'm not engaged in any crazy ass protests, but if I were planning on doing some crazy ass protests, I'll tell you what, the first thing I have to think about is, okay, financial logistics. How decentralized is our funding? How decentralized is the way that money is going to, flow from and to whoever needs to flow? And this weird, this weird phrase right here: atomic swap the BTC to XMR. That's Monero. There's like technology out there already that has been developed that's trying to create payment processes that are decentralized. That there's no one company, there's no Coinbase, there's no Gemini, where the government can't issue an order and say, hey, you shut that down, because there's no person to issue an order to. You'd have to issue an order to like 40,000 people around the globe, maybe 4 million people around the globe. Well, how do you do that? And the answer is you can't. I think this is going to be the pivot. So my expectation is in the short term, lots of trouble, lots of pain. Crypto is going to do whatever, because I mean, hell, if you can't use crypto, convert it to cash without the government's permission, then what's the point? So I think we're going to see some people potentially like look at crypto differently. Like, okay, this isn't really safety. This isn't any sort of security away from centralized control. Other people, though, I think, are going to take the exact opposite lesson, which is the reason why we couldn't use crypto to fund these protests, the reason why we couldn't use crypto without the authorities knowing about it is because it wasn't decentralized. So when we go do our thing, we have to make sure that whatever financial system, whatever financial infrastructure must be decentralized. And that means we have to use crypto. We can't use US dollars. We can't use, we have to use crypto. So I'm a regular like mother of two and I could care less about any of this stuff. Guess what? I'm going to learn, how to use MetaMask. I'm going to learn how to do decentralized exchanges. I'm going to learn how to do, decentralized currency swaps, right? Because that's one way that you would convert, one type of currency into something that maybe you could use. So I think crypto adoption go rather through the roof. Why is this important for us in housing? I suppose in a way it's important for us in housing because we're in the world, and when the world changes, we're going to have to change with it. But the other part that occurs to me is we're a real heavily regulated industry, right? From the government to, sort of internally, like we're largely self-regulated in some respects, right? So whether it's Realtor Association Code of Ethics, the MLS and its rules and policies, government rules, Fair Housing Act, all these types of things, it works for the most part. It really does. However, I think one of the lessons I would take away from what's happening now and what the likely consequences are is there's some trade-offs of centralization, right? And the trade-off is, on the one hand, it's really convenient, right? I mean, it really is. It's really convenient. You go to one place, one-stop shop, take care of everything. The flip side of it is, if things are centralized, it's subject to control, right? And it's subject to, in the crypto world, we call it censorship, but it's subject to somebody like that organization saying, like, deplatforming you, right? So the thought that popped immediately into my head was like Zillow, right? Zillow is incredibly useful. It's incredibly helpful. It's one website. You go, all the homes are there, all the listings are there. As a buyer, I'm like, okay, I want to look at all the homes. But because it's centralized, if Zillow says we don't want you coming on our website, then are you not looking at homes, right? If the government comes and say, hey, Zillow, we don't want, or to, I don't know, realtors, to MLS and say, hey, we don't want anybody who's disfavored, right? Whatever that means. We don't want them being able to access it. We need you to freeze their access. We need you to freeze their accounts. What then? And because I genuinely feel that the big trend happening throughout the world, because of things like this Canadian trucker protest, because of things like Onlyfans, because of things like fiat money printing, decentralization is just happening. And the technology that's available now, what's amazing, what changed my mind about blockchain technology is that it allows for that decentralization to happen. And if it's something that's going to happen and there's demand for it, because like, okay, yeah, it's far more inconvenient to use decentralized platforms, to use decentralized software and decentralized exchanges than it is to a centralized one. On the other hand, the government can't come in and shut me down. Demand for decentralization, I think, is about to go through the roof, at least among a pretty big chunk of the quote mainstream population. So it's something to think about, right? For those of us who are in this industry, I don't know that we're going to see it anytime hit soon, right? I just don't. But we're seeing it hit in finance. We're seeing it hit, north of the border. And I think it's a mistake to basically just take things at face value right now. Okay, so this is what happened. This is how it's going to play out. I don't think it's that way. I think it's, okay, this time this happened. A lot of people are going to have learned lessons from that. One of the lessons that they're going to learn from it is centralization is real efficient. It's really convenient, but it has some real downsides. And a number of people are going to look to, and I think actively seek to figure out, how do I decentralize my life more? And I suspect we're going to see that play out in our industry as well, in some ways that I can't even imagine, a few ways that I can. So, like I said, this is just a musings. It's just such an interesting topic, and it was hard to try and figure out, like, I want to talk about decentralization. What's a good example of it? And I thought this served as a really good example of it. Anyway, if you have any thoughts, if you have any agreement, disagreement, post the comments below or get in touch with me. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks everybody. Bye now.